Before we get started here today, I want to give a shout out to Maple Miyazaki, who has supported me on Patreon. Thank you very much. You can be like Maple Miyazaki by visiting patreon.com/thelorehunter and get your name a shout out. You could have credits at the end, and you gain access to behind the scenes stuff. You get early releases on videos and other cool stuff. So if you're interested, take a look at that link and you can join the Lore Hunter community. Why, hello there. Today is May 31st, 2021 at the time of recording, and it is day 722 since Elden Ring was first announced at E3 2019. And today's video is sort of a collaboration between my Elden Ring So Far series and my Elden Wait series. And the reason I say that is because my Elden Ring So Far series is sort of factual and it's supposed to be evergreen and an archive following the development and giving official information and really trying to get an idea of what Elden Ring is supposed to be according to developers and, sort of being what it's pitched as, to get an idea of how to approach the game and to be an archive of the development history. Whereas the Elden Wait is sort of a casual series where we do some speculation, some community discussion, news, and it is less objective in its approach and just sort of trying to pass the time while we wait for Elden Ring to be in our hands. So this video is sort of a hybrid because it's not really following development information, and I'll talk about like when certain rumors happened and when certain memes came, and but it is at the same time a factual timeline. So I think it is helpful to have this as an archive to look back on, and just as we're rolling into the Summer Games Fest E3 2021 season, and we're all hoping for Elden Ring, this is sort of a good recap of where everything's come from so far, because you may forget where the Wooper Meme came from, or you might wonder when Fromsoftware talked about a certain topic, or where a certain piece of information came from, if that was official or not. So that's the goal of this video, so let's get right into it. I am starting by going all the way back to early 2017, when Elden Ring is recorded to have started development. And I have a quote from Miyazaki here that came from the Xbox Wire interview that happened in June 2019. And Miyazaki says, "Development for Elden Ring just started after the development for the Dark Souls 3 DLC had ended." Side note, that's roughly early 2017. At that time, Elden Ring was being planned as a more classic fantasy title compared to others that were either being considered or already in early stages of development, such as Sekiro, Deracine. We wanted to create a new dark fantasy action RPG full of things that we weren't able to do in the Dark Souls series. So Elden Ring was being developed, and we fast forward to March 27th, 2019. Spawnwave posted a video with information from Liam Robertson alleging that there was an open-world Fromsoftware game in development and that it was in collaboration with George R.R. Martin. And also in this video, he gave a few nuggets of information about the game. It's open world style compared to the other Souls games, that it's a bunch of kingdoms where you go around and decide which one to go to, and you get powers by defeating like the leader of a kingdom. And as I mentioned, that George R. R. Martin was part of the project, and he was helping build the world of the game. So actually at this time, a lot of people didn't really cover this video. There was a small, group of people reporting on it, but major outlets and whatever, a lot of them sort of brushed it off as a rumor. But then in March 20th, 2019, a few things happened. On George R. R. Martin's Not a blog that he does, he said, "I've consulted on a video game out of Japan," and that got people hyped up because it seemed to confirm what Spawnwave was saying. People connected the dots that it was probably this Fromsoftware title that was, this rumor came out with in March. And then also on that day, there's sort of what is now a bit of an infamous 4chan post that alleged that the project was called Project Rune. And this was later refuted by Omnipotent, but this post also was the genesis for a few other things that have sort of lingered in the community even to this day. One that's more or less gone to the wayside is that the game was being made in Unreal Engine, which, according to Omnipotent, it's being made using the engine that they've used since Demon Souls. And then that it was a Viking action RPG with, heavy roots in Norse mythology. So that's sort of where that became a real thing. And we'll follow the chain of events that sort of solidified this. Because the next day on March 21st, 2019, on the heels of Martin's blog post, Gematsu released an article stating that they've heard from a source close to Fromsoftware that they're working on a project called GR for the last 3 years, which seems to check out, and that it's open world and there will be horse riding and will be announced at E3 2019. So in a combination of this article and a 4chan rumor, Project Great Rune became the rumored name. And then also, following that, on May 26th, 2019, VaatiVidya posted up a video, Rumors of Great Rune, an open world game by Fromsoftware and George R. R. Martin, where he went over this recent information, and using a Games Radar article, he also put forth that it was Norse mythology inspired. And this was from Games Radar. They didn't cite any source for this. And the only source I've been able to find is the 4chan rumor. So it seems like they just sort of slipped that in alongside more credible information that came from Spawnwave and Liam Robertson. So with Vaati's video here going over the Great Rune project and putting it forth as Norse mythology, in this Games Radar article, it sort of got solidified in the community that there was a Norse influence, and Omnipotent and myself and others have refuted that over time, and, pointed out that all Fromsoftware games have some inspirations from Norse mythology, and that, why would you hire George R. R. Martin? Why would you work with, like, the most famous author we have currently in the fantasy genre for sure, and then, just have him just use Norse mythology instead of making his own original world. So that's where that rumor, I think, really came into prominence, was here in late May, and this is May 26th where Vaati posted this video. And then on May 27th, 2019, the Elden Ring subreddit was made, and to this day it's a mystery to me how they exactly knew the name at that time. The term Elden Ring wouldn't really become public knowledge until June 7th, as we will cover. So, just an interesting note there is that the Elden Ring subreddit was made May 27th, 2019. And then on May 31st, 2019, Omnipotent posts his first Elden Ring hype post on Reset Era. So, as the time of recording, it is the 2-year anniversary of Omnipotent making that first hype post about Elden Ring. And in this post, Omni hints at Elden Ring being high fantasy, having some environmental inspiration from Scotland, multiplayer, and that it is not a Game of Thrones game, which people thought could be the case when George R. R. Martin was first announced, and that he also said it is not about Norse mythology, is the beginning of his campaign to try and change the public opinion on that. So then on June 7th, 2019, a security leak on Bandai Namco's website leaked that the game was called Elden Ring and that it was, in fact, being made in collaboration with George R. R. Martin, and this fact spread all over the internet, and Jason Schreier from Kotaku at the time released an article that got a lot of circulation, and then Zuj, Daniel Ahmed on Twitter, posted that up, and he sort of indicated that there were some insider circles that may have known about this a bit longer. As we look back towards maybe, May 27th, the Elden Ring subreddit was made, so some people were aware of the name, but June 7th is when it sort of became public knowledge due to this security breach on Bandai Namco's website, and just 2 days before the Microsoft press conference at E3. And so on June 9th, 2019, a few things happened. Elden Ring was officially announced at Microsoft's Xbox press conference with the announcement trailer that I've seen a lot of times, about 722 plus times. And also, that was the day where Xbox Wire published an interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki by Bamco community specialist Sam Wilkinson. So this Xbox Wire interview is published up on Xbox Wire, but the interview itself is between someone from Bandai Namco and Miyazaki. So it is basically an internal interview. And this is where we learn a lot of the information we know. Now, this is where we learned that development started in early 2017. That's where we learned that it's a dark fantasy third-person action RPG with character customization. And this is where we first learn that George R. R. Martin created the mythology of the world in collaboration with From, and that it's an open world game with large open fields and multi-layered castles. And he also has a quote about the concept art of the character who appears to be wearing skin. And he says about this concept art that we chose this character because of his eccentric aspects, as well as the way he portrays the darkness that the world and story possesses. This character also represents one more theme in addition to the previously mentioned eccentricity. That theme is the will or ambition of mankind. So that is where we first get these themes about the darkness of the world and the will or ambition of mankind, as well as like the only like concept art image that has been officially released so far as of May 31st, 2021. So then on June 21st, 2019, after a series of smaller articles, IGN released the full interview that they did with Ezra Crab, who works for IGN Japan. He did the interview with Miyazaki. And in this interview, there's a number of quotes and pieces of information I'll share just to sort of jog memory, but these are sort of standout quotes that have lingered in the community and a basis, again, for most of the knowledge we actually have about the game at this point. So this is the interview that contains the only sort of official mention of a horse that you can ride. It's not a quote from Miyazaki in the article, but it's Ezra Krabs saying that Miyazaki talked about that. And this is where Miyazaki talks about towns and people in Elden Ring, and that, you know, it won't be like these bustling towns like you might expect from like Skyrim or The Witcher 3. That'll be more of the like dungeon ecology we're used to, and ruins and stuff like that. While the narrow and complex dungeons of our previous games were indeed interconnected, Elden Ring's environments will be much more open and vast. The more extensive world will form the base of Elden Ring's gameplay, and its mechanics are designed with that type of environment in mind. Villages will be the dark, dungeon-like ruins that you've come to expect from us. Creating a more open game is a big challenge for us. If we were to add towns on top of that, it would become a bit too much. So we decided to create an open-world style game focused on what we are best at. And then here's a quote from the interview about George R. R. Martin's role in creating Elden Ring. Storytelling in video games, at least the way we do it at Fromsoftware, comes with a lot of restrictions for the writer. I don't think that it was a good idea to have Martin write within those restrictions. By having him write about a time the player isn't directly involved in, he is free to unleash his creativity in the way he likes. Furthermore, as Fromsoftware, we didn't want to create a more linear and story-driven experience for Elden Ring. Both issues could be resolved by having Martin write about the world's history instead. He also says, the player will be able to learn about Martin's mythology through exploration. We are known for letting the player explore the game's lore through fragments of environmental storytelling, and this time around Martin's story is what you'll be trying to unravel. The period the player actually explores is still connected to the old times, so as you slowly discover why the world has become the way it is, you'll learn about Martin's mythology as well. And here's a final pair of quotes that sort of gives Miyazaki's thoughts on darkness and beauty in his games. Light looks more beautiful in the darkness. When there is something beautiful in the middle of a wasteland, we are able to appreciate it more. One jewel doesn't look like much when you have a pile of them, but if you find a jewel in the midst of mud, it is worth so much more. And then he says, personally, a world that is happy and bright is something that just doesn't feel realistic to me. It may sound like I have a trauma or something, but I believe that the world is generally a wasteland that is not kind to us. That's just the way I see it. So at this point, we have the bulk of like official information about Elden Ring between the announcement trailer and these two interviews. This is like 90+% of the official information we actually have about the game. But over the course of the next 2 years, a number of like rumors and leaks happen, memes, and we sort of, following this timeline, get to see like how the community developed and how just sort of this whole Elden Ring situation as it is now sort of rose up. So June 28th, 2019, is the last time the Elden Ring Twitter account posted. It was showing an animated logo with some new music. And then in September 22nd, 2019, after going a whole 3 months without information, the Elden Ring subreddit started to create a collective delusion that was Elden Ring in the minds of the subreddit. And this is where Glaive Master Hodir was born. On September 22nd, 2019, user Master3786 did a post about the easiest to hardest bosses, and the first boss was Glaive Master Hodir, who became a widely used meme. So on launch day, if you see someone being Glaive Master Hodir, it is because of this post from 2019 and the memeing that followed. And then on September 26, 2019, is the last time the Elden Ring Instagram account posted. And then at this point, I'm fast forwarding all the way to January 10th, 2020. But in between late September and January, there was just a lot of waiting and a lot of fake lore and smaller memes. And there was obviously the disappointment of Elden Ring not being at TGA 2019. So we get to January 10th, 2020, and Omnipotent posts some world and gameplay information. It is here where there's the comparison to Shadow of the Colossus made in terms of natural transitions between open and restricted sections of the map. It is also here where we hear about the day-night cycle, and Omnipotent talks about roaming enemies and open world encounters. This is also around the time when we find out that there's wolves in the game, and that there's an enemy, like a ring wraith type enemy, that will pursue you around the open world. And then on February 29th, 2020, Omnipotent clarifies a few things on Reset Era. He talks about how Fromsoftware is putting effort into improving magic and generally the combat and making a really good magic and melee combat systems. Talks about the dedicated jump button, and that he clarifies that water won't be a significant part of the Elden Ring experience. Some stuff from his original hype post back in May 31st, 2019, sort of indicated, to some people that there might be more to do with water or boats, and he was just clarifying that it won't be a significant part of the Elden Ring experience. And this being the period of time where Omnipotent is pretty much all of the information about the game, on March 2nd, 2020, Omnipotent talks about a few more open world items. He talks about wildlife in Elden Ring being a more of a thing, and just some more comments about, the open world and what that's like. So on March 23rd, 2020, in a now deleted post on the Elden Ring subreddit, sparked this whole thing about Elden Ring versus Elden Tec as this trademark concern. And some people put this forth because there was this dispute about the Elden Ring trademark from this company, Elden Tec. And it ultimately ended up being nothing, but some people put this forth as potentially why Elden Ring hadn't shown any information. We know it's more likely that Elden Ring was supposed to appear at TGA 2019, and about a month before they pulled out, and this was the start of an internal delay, and that then rolled into COVID. But at this time, people thought that maybe this had to do something with it, which we ultimately know that this is not true. But and once this dispute ended up being nothing, and it got dropped, and the trademark process went forward fine, and we continued to get no information. So, and rounding out the golden era of Omnipotent posts on Reset Era, we have Omnipotent's lore post, and he talks about a number of things here. He talks about how the player will be human, but that there will be other fantasy races and fantasy beings in the game, and that the world is more magical, and magic itself plays a bigger role in the world. And there's different schools of magic, but they represent different ideologies, and so they have these political and ideological affiliations. And he talks about how Elden Ring is this the Elden Ring being whole is sort of the natural state of the world, and how it being shattered messes with the natural order of the world. And I've since then personally talked about how this seems like the Elden Ring shattering is messing with the idea of growth and decay in the world. And the shattering also weakened the barrier between the world and the unimaginable stuff that is beyond the normal world, and how the shattering transforms the world and the people within that world. So his final thing is the player character will have more of a personal role in the story. They won't be such like a nameless undead sort of situation. They will be, part of the world, and they will have connections within the world, or they will have some sort of personal motivation. And so this is the end of Omnipotent's major lore posts. And I do want to say Omnipotent's stuff is considered very reliable to me, but I do want to clarify here, as I clarify with any unofficial information, that development changes a lot of things and stuff can change over time. So this stuff, he keeps it relatively general because it could change, but the concepts are less likely to change. But so when you're hearing these things that come up, I'm trying to give the history of when these ideas were introduced to the community, but that the final product could be different. So I just wanted to clarify that. So now we are going to skip forward to September 22nd, 2020. But between late March and September here, there was a whole summer of disappointment. Because of COVID and no E3, there were a series of smaller events in which the community hoped for every event, to the point of it sort of being a meme, that Elden Ring would show up. And that just led to a whole bunch of chats of every event during 2020, all these smaller events, Summer Games Fest, IGN Summer Expo, they're just saying, oh, in the chat. And, it was a real disappointing summer for the Elden Ring community, where they kept hoping that something would show up all the way through, the opening night live for Gamescom, and there was nothing. But now we get to September 22nd, 2020, and at a Media Arts Festival Q&A in Japan, Miyazaki talks about Elden Ring briefly. The Media Arts thing is about Sekiro, but he does briefly mention Elden Ring. So this is where the idea of like racism and prejudice comes in as being part of Elden Ring, but it seems likely that this was actually a miscommunication where they're talking about Game of Thrones. And it's important to note that Miyazaki did not state that these ideas of racism and prejudice being in Elden Ring. So I'm not sure about that, but it's only notable because this is when this idea comes into fruition, and Miyazaki did not state that himself, but he did briefly mention, that they're working on, Elden Ring basically, as just a side comment during this otherwise Sekiro-based conversation. And then on October 30th, 2020, Fromsoftware's official Twitter talks about Elden Ring. They say, "We also greatly appreciate the enthusiasm and support shown for Elden Ring, our next dark fantasy action RPG. We hope you look forward to it." So this was tagged on to a post that was talking about Sekiro, which got an update that features the boss gauntlet and the messaging system. So this is Fromsoftware's only official mention of Elden Ring since it was first announced. And then we get to November 11th, where Tamor Hussein from GameSpot talks with Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, and he says, and that Phil Spencer says that he has played quite a bit of Elden Ring and that Miyazaki needs to leave the room when he's playing. So this is the first mention that he had played it a while ago. A lot of people speculate that that was probably pre-COVID when he visited Japan early in 2020, but that Phil Spencer, Daddy Xbox, has played Elden Ring. So then on December 10th, 2020, a few things happened. First is that Elden Ring won most anticipated game at the Game Awards 2020, but there was no further information about Elden Ring at the event. This was a lot of people are surrounding that time. There was a lot of smoke where people thought, hey, Elden Ring might show up. There's a lot of people being very hopeful, and some insiders were sort of indicating that it was possible. And so when it didn't happen, it was, very disappointing for the community. And this is when the Wooper Meme came into fruition also, following the heels of the Game Awards 2020. So during the Game Awards, there was a promotional Wooper event for Pokemon Go, and it was mentioned just multiple times. And on the subreddit, user Whoa posted that the Elden Ring sub is now a Wooper sub after no news of Elden Ring at the Game Awards, and it sort of became a meme. It's a flare in the community, and you can just see no end of Wooper memes in association with Elden Ring because of this post and because of the Game Awards 2020. On December 30th, 2020, a few things happened. The first was that Yasuhiro Kitao, one of Fromsoftware's marketing people, he acknowledged in a post on Twitter winning most anticipated at the Game Awards 2020 and reassured people that development was continuing forward. This is just on Yasuhiro's personal account. It's not like an official post from Bandai Namco or from Software, but it's the only acknowledgement that was given to the most anticipated award for Elden Ring at the Game Awards 2020. Also on December 30th, 2020, Chinese content creator Lonqi Bang Bang Tang, I don't know if I have the second name right, posted a video showing some supposed concept art and sharing some information about the game. This is the concept art you may have seen. It's very low quality. It's about, one is like a snake man, and one looks to be the giant lad on the field from the announcement trailer in much blurrier, and he looks to be post the battle. He's got a bunch of spears sticking out of him, and you can see a little tiny horse in front. But in addition to this, so Lonqi has connections with Fromsoftware, has been to Fromsoftware's headquarters, has talked with Miyazaki, I believe, and is a prominent content creator. So the concept art is believed to be legit. And in addition to this, in his video, he talks about the white-haired and red-haired factions and talks about a firekeeper type waifu. And people are a little dubious about the details of this information. I personally am, just because generally what I've heard is that it may be more speculation on their part, but the concept art seems to be legit and is generally considered real. But again, it is very low quality because Elden Ring is just not allowed to get any high quality leaks. Not that I want them at this point anyways, but that is where those images came from on December 30th. So now we are in 2021, and on January 14th, concept artist for Digic and illustrator Gabriel Bjork Sternstrom posted on his ArtStation some concept art that he did for the Elden Ring announcement trailer. He quickly took this art down, and he took down a post that he did on Reddit, and it is believed that his non-disclosure agreement expired and that he posted up the artwork because he thought it was okay, but upon realizing or learning that the game was not out yet, he took it down. And I think another likely explanation is when he posted it up, not realizing the game wasn't out and that people had so many questions about the game that he was just getting bombarded and took it down because he didn't want that. That wasn't the attention he wanted. He doesn't know much about the game. He's a concept artist for Digic who worked on the announcement trailer with From, and he just sort of got the smallest of briefs and concepts, and he did some internal concept art that played into the final product that we see in the announcement trailer. But looking at the concept art, we do get a few things that that have been interesting and something worth keeping in mind, and this is where these came from. And this is where there is a confirmation of the idea that the person inside the tree phases or transforms between male and female presenting. And that was something that was speculated because it seemed like there were two people where the community called the blacksmith. It looked like there was a guy, a girl, blacksmith, or there's two people in the same spot. This is sort of confirming that it's probably one person who's like phasing back and forth. And the hammer in the concept art is identified as a scepter. The anvil, or whatever they're banging on, is identified as a dais. And this is also where tree imagery is more prevalent, with the etching of a tree on the dais, and it's more clear that the room is probably like the inside of a tree or the inside of like a copse of trees or many trees coming together to form a larger tree. And for me personally, this is where I sort of, it was something that I had been thinking about, but sort of feel like it sort of confirms that the person is not smashing the Elden Ring in there, but that they're destroying a scepter that may relate or have power, that comes from the Elden Ring, and that the shattering of the Elden Ring, like nullified this power or eliminated this symbol of sovereignty, and that the person there, it's like their duty or their responsibility to then destroy the scepter, is at least my own speculation at this point. So then, at this point, from January 14th, 2021, we have a series of months of general silence, rumors of potential showings, memes, general hollowing, and then we get to March 1st, 2021. On this day, this is when an old internal trailer used in investor discussions from Bandai Namco Greece is leaked online, and the various parts are put together by people such as myself and posted up on the internet for people to look at. And it is very low quality and is likely well over a year old at the time that it leaked out, but it's also the first look at Elden Ring for the community. This is where we first see this large ethereal tree, which is speculated, it has similarities in appearance to the spiral world tree in Berserk, as well as the world tree in Norse mythology, and even like the tree Lorelin in Tolkien's mythology. Either way, big, magical looking tree is shown in the leaked trailer. Also, there was a narrator who was discussed, to be anywhere from being Peter Dinklage to Peter Serafinowicz, and Lonqi, the content creator who posted up the concept art at the end of 2020, says that the narrator is Patch's voice actor, William Vanderpue, and I don't think it is, and it's an ongoing debate. Who knows if we will get the answer, but that has a debate that came out of this leaked trailer. There was also a large moon shown in the trailer with this Onmyoji looking character who's very like Asian looking, and has a big moon that comes up behind them at the end of their segment of the trailer, and it looks like it could be a Moonlight Greatsword tie-in, so that is where that came from. And there's also a large bridge shown that looks to be reminiscent of Shadow of the Colossus that's connecting with the large ethereal tree. And we also see a large head that Lonqi, the Chinese commentator, claims is a reference to Surtur from Norse mythology. Take that with a grain of salt, of course, as anything that is unofficial. And we seem to see the spider character from the announcement trailer, or someone who looks like him, briefly in the trailer, with the player character fighting against them and having them screech. So this leaked trailer was obviously huge for the community because it was our first look of the actual game, because the announcement trailer is just CGI basically. And but it is also very old, so it's worth keeping in mind that this could be very different from what we end up seeing, but is all we have now as a reference for what Elden Ring, the game, actually looks like. So just keep that in mind, that the trailer or whatever we see for Elden Ring officially could look very different, and that everything seen there is subject to change as well, and that things could be very different in the game from what is seen in the leaked trailer. And now getting real close is May 25th, 2021. Omnipotent confirms that there is one mount in Elden Ring and that it looks similar to the red elk Yakul from Princess Mononoke. And if you carefully squint at the leaked trailer, you can see that it indeed does not look like a horse, but to be like an elk. But it's pretty blurry, and there's one frame where it's kind of clear. But that Omnipotent confirms that there. And so if you see a whole bunch of memes about Yakul or a red elk, that is where that is coming from, is that confirmation from Omni, which, again, beating this drum, is unofficial information, but the information we have right now. And there you have it. Otherwise, there have been a plethora of fake leaks, false prophets, and other small events in the Elden Ring community, but those are the major ones. And with all this, you're caught up. There's not been much official information, but the community has been active. There's been some leaks and some other stuff happening. So now you know what's going on as we move into the summer of 2021, where hopefully here, as we move right into June tomorrow, that we will get some official Elden Ring information and maybe even a release date. So, stay tuned for that. I will be covering all of that on the channel, obviously. Official information will probably end up on the Elden Wait and the Elden Ring So Far, but I will be covering it all in great detail and giving my insight as someone who has spent far too much time following this game, as you can tell. And, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you for the next Elden Wait and hopefully the next Elden Ring So Far soon.